Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you a slightly rushed and not very glamorous October book haul. So today is the day before I head off to my parents' place to weather the second lockdown. So I've been packing frantically and have been sort of, running around, and I realized that I didn't do my October book haul video. I'm obviously not going to take all of these books with me into lockdown, and I didn't want to have to stick in all the covers because that's such a bore. So I thought that I would do it now. I am not wearing any makeup. I'm not particularly glam today. I'm a little bit sweaty because I've been running around and packing, but we're doing our best. So I ended up hauling a fair few books in the month of October. Most of them are books that I either bought for myself or were very kindly sent to me by friends as gifts. I have a couple of physical copies of upcoming books that are going to be released in 2021, and then one that comes out in November, which is Christmas themed. And then I have a fair few NetGalley copies as well, because I am including NetGalley copies in these book hauls now. So in the interest of time, I'm just gonna go ahead and dive right in. So as per usual, I will split these up into books that I was sent by publishers or digital review copies, and then I'll do kind of everything else. So I received 2 physical books from publishers this month. They're quite different in terms of subject matter, but that's kind of funny. So the first one is one that comes out in November. It looks very, very silly, and I'm kind of really pumped for this. This is Secret Santa by Andrew Schaefer. So this is a sort of horror comedy Christmas themed book. This comes out from Quirk Books this month. I think it's really soon. Let's see. It says here that this will come out on the 10th of November. It looks like it's going to be a really speedy and fun, fast read. It looks incredibly silly, and I'm really looking forward to this. Scottish Husband also wants to read this, so maybe we'll read it and review it together. But basically this book follows a character named Lucy Mayer who's desperate to work anywhere in publishing. She ends up landing a job which isn't really ideal. So there's kind of this bizarre set of circumstances that leads to her being hired. Basically, she has to find the next big thing in horror, because this is the 1980s and we've got Stephen King being really popular and all of that. So she has to find the next horror superstar. So it's very clear that her colleagues don't really like her very much, and they begin kind of hazing her, playing pranks on her and things like that. But all of this kind of comes to a head where at the Christmas Secret Santa exchange, she receives a very strange gift. And her colleagues who have been unkind to her start to fall victim to mysterious accidents, and she thinks that this particular gift has something to do with it. So she pairs up, I believe, with a former author, Fabian Nightingale, which is an amazing name, and she's going to track down the anonymous Secret Santa who gave her this gift and figure out what's going on. So this sounds really fun. This sounds like a really, really good lockdown going into Christmas kind of book, and I'm very much looking forward to diving into this. Next is a book that comes out, I think, in February of next year. I remember receiving an email about this. I'm 90% sure I didn't actually request this because I was like, it sounds good, but for the sake of my brain and my mental health, let's maybe not request it. But it showed up anyway, so maybe I did. I'm not entirely sure. But this is The Coven by Lizzie Fry. This comes out on the 25th of February from Sphere Books. So it says here that this is a breathtaking global race against the clock to defeat an imposing organization dedicated to destroying women's power and potential. It says it's for fans of Vox, the Power and Discovery of Witches. So basically we are in a world where witchcraft is real. Mothers hand their power down to their daughters, and the power is usually harmless and peaceful. So then we have a US president who is a populist demagogue who decides that all witches must be imprisoned for their own safety as well as for the safety of those around them, creating a world in which to be female is one step away from being a criminal. So witches around the world are being rounded up, and one young woman discovers a power she did not know that she had. It's a dangerous force and it puts her at the top of the list for a global witch hunt, but she and the women around her won't give in so easily, not while all women's power is under threat. Depending on how the election goes today, because it's election day, we'll see whether this book is going to make me really upset or not. I don't know, we'll find out. But it sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really good and interesting book, a really good blend of like fantasy with current issues, but maybe a little too close to home at the moment. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about books that I bought. There's a few here. There's actually one more. It's currently in the bags of stuff that I've packed up because I forgot to pull it out. It's fine, I'll just tell you what it is. So the first one is Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I love Thomas Hardy. I have read one of his books, which is Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which is fucking depressing. Just the most depressing thing I've ever read in my life. But hey, apparently I really enjoy dark and depressing stuff, so I thought that I'd pick up Far from the Madding Crowd. I know this has a adaptation, I think that's quite good. My friend was telling me about it. But it centers around a woman named, Bathsheba Everdeen, a proud working woman whose life is complicated by three men, a respectable farmer, seductive man, and then a devoted man, and she becomes the object of scandal and betrayal. Sounds great. I'm really looking forward to this. I have, ever since I read The Turn of the Screw last month, which you can see in my wrap-up, I have had kind of a hankering to read classics again, so I picked this up. I also picked up The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. Despite the fact that the Brontes and I tend to not get on, I figured I would give Anne a try. I can't remember off the top of my head what that book is about, but links to everything will be down below as usual. But I really didn't enjoy Wuthering Heights, and I hate Jane Eyre so much I never have made it through despite trying 3 times. So this is my last chance for the Brontes, I guess. I'm looking forward to it. It sounds like it might be a little bit of a spookier, gothic-y kind of book because 1, Brontes, and 2, takes place in a house in England. It's never gonna go well in classics. Speaking of classics, I also picked up a copy of The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I have read one of his books before, and that was The Moonstone, which is often sort of held up as the very first detective novel in the English language. It's really fun, it's batshit crazy, there's a diamond theft, it's a great read. So I decided to pick up The Woman in White, which is, it's not like a paranormal book, but it's definitely a little bit on the spookier side, and as I just said, really enjoying spooky classics at the moment. I think that this is going to be fabulous. So what is this about? The problem with these Penguin classics is there's nothing on the back, so I think it genuinely just assumes that you know exactly what the book you're picking up is about. Let's Google this instead. So I can either find no plot description or a plot description that just gives everything away. So basically what I do know about this book is it's a little bit kind of creepy and eerie. We have this man who I believe is an art teacher who encounters this mysterious lost and distressed woman all dressed in white, kind of gives her directions and sends her on her way, and he finds out that she has escaped from an asylum. So he ends up going to, I believe, to either a friend's house or on a friend's recommendation he goes to work at this country house as a art teacher, and he realizes that one of the members of the family bears a striking resemblance to this woman. That's pretty much all I know, and that's kind of where I'm gonna keep it. I really enjoyed The Moonstone, as I said, and I think that this is going to be a perfect addition to like my spooky vibes going through to the end of the year and into winter. So then I have a middle grade book. I talked about this in my November TBR madness video. This is Secret of Birds and Bone by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. I really love her children's fiction. She's, I think, best known for her children's fiction, although she now has a adult book called The Mercies, which is also on that TBR, and she has a young adult book called The Deathless Girls. So she's sort of spreading her wings a little bit, but this is her most recent children's book, which is kind of the thing that she's best known for. So this takes takes place in a city called Siena, I believe, and we follow a character named Sophia. And Sophia's mother is a bone binder, so she makes these charms and keepsakes. Ever since an unexpected visit from a silver-veiled stranger, Sophia's mother's not quite herself. She's not taking pleasure in her work. She's not letting Sophia help her with her work either. So her mother ends up being arrested on Sophia's birthday, which is sad, and the children are taken to a city orphanage, and Sophia decides that she no longer wants to be a helpless child. She wants to kind of take some action to help herself and her family. And so all she has is an intricate bone locket, which is a gift from her mother, and she sets about to unravel its secrets and the secrets of her family that bind them to this particular city. I think her middle grade books are absolutely wonderful. I would definitely highly recommend them, especially The Way Past Winter for this particular season that we're coming into, and also I really love The Girl of Ink and Stars as well, so I have very high hopes for this. A book that I read in the month of October was The Sin Eater by Megan Campisi. This is a funny one because it's not historical fiction. This is not a place that exists. It's kind of a slightly alternate version of England, but it reads exactly like historical fiction, and a lot of it runs really parallel to our own world, and there's no fantasy elements in this whatsoever, so it feels weird to say it's a historical fiction book because it's not. Whatever. I talked about this in my October wrap-up. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It's not hugely strong on characters, I think, which I think is not necessarily the intention. I think we're meant to really connect with these characters. But I thought that it was still a really enjoyable, it's not fun, a really enjoyable book. And it was incredibly compulsive. I just found myself just turning the pages and losing time to this. So if you're interested in historical fiction and want something a little bit offbeat, then I would definitely recommend picking this up. And the very last book that I picked up for myself is one that I got off of a friend's unhaul pile. I bought this off of her, and I'm very curious to give it another go because I did initially attempt to read the proof copy of this book back when it was first coming out, and it just didn't click with me, but because of the efforts of a couple of bookish friends, I decided to give The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons another try. So Judith from Dead Good Book Reviews, and Katie from Brightness Katie Reads, and my friend Asha, who is a book blogger at A Cat, a Book, and a Cup of Tea, all really enjoy these books. So I've decided that I'm going to give them another try because I do think that this might be the case of it just wasn't the right time to try to read it, and maybe picking it up a year or so later will do me a lot of good. So I think that this is quite a complicated book, and I think it becomes a little bit less convoluted in future books, which is something that is very good to know. But basically this is telling the story of a man named Kieran, who was a bard's apprentice who grew up with sort of tales of legendary deeds. So he is also a thief. He steals and he accidentally raids the wrong house and is marked by a demon, and his life will never be the same again. So his plight brings him to the attention of royalty, who claim him as a lost son of their immoral prince. But far from living the dream, Kieran's at the mercy of his new family's ruthless ambitions. However, escaping his jeweled cage makes matters much worse. He's horrified to learn that he is at the center of an ancient prophecy, and every side, from gods and demons to dragons and mages, want him as their pawn. Those old stories lied about many things too, especially the myth where the hero always wins. So this sounds like it's going to be really great. It sounds like it twists a lot of sort of classic fantasy tropes, which is something I always appreciate in fantasy books. And I think that if I read this at the right time for me, I think that this is going to be one that I really enjoy. I do know it is quite complicated and convoluted. There are footnotes, which are actually, if I remember, quite funny, because it's like the person who's writing down the manuscript's own notes about like what's happening in this story. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to giving this another go. So these other books here are other kind of assorted odds and ends from this haul. So first up is a book that I saw a friend was unhauling and asked her if I could take it off her pile. So this is After the Flood, and this is by Cassandra Montag. I've heard very little about this, but it's one that's really intrigued me. So I think that this takes place in a world that is mostly water, so there has been basically huge flooding. America is basically now a set of islands with kind of trade ships and sort of raiders hanging about. So we follow a character named Pearl, and Pearl knows very little of her family other than her mother Myra. So her father Jacob and her elder sister Ro left when her mother was pregnant with Pearl. So Myra aches for the daughter that she once lost, Ro, and a chance encounter reveals that Ro may still be alive, so Myra, the mother, packs up 6-year-old Pearl, and together they begin a dangerous voyage across the waters to the valley, where rumors of violence and breeding ships run rampant. So they end up getting to their destination and they find solace on board a ship called Sedna, which is full to the brim with supplies and able crew, and they are closer to finding Ro than they have ever been. However, in order to actually find her daughter, Myra has to deceive everyone around her and betray the trust of those she's come to love, and ask herself if she is willing to sacrifice everything to find her missing daughter. This sounds really great. It sounds really interesting. I love kind of familial relationships in books, and I'm very intrigued by this. So if you've read this, please let me know. I think Judith has read this, so Judith, tell me. This next book is one I've had my eye on for a while because I really enjoy this author's romances, and this is her very first thriller. I ended up getting this through a book depository promotion type thing. So this is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This apparently has a lot of shades of kind of Get Out, which is a fabulous movie if you have not seen it. And it's basically about gentrification in New York, but with a horror and thriller twist. So Sydney Green is Brooklyn born and raised, but her beloved neighborhood is beginning to change every time she blinks. So there are condos constantly sprouting up, there are for sale signs on old buildings overnight, and the neighbors she feels like she's known her whole life are disappearing. So she decides to channel her frustration into a walking tour of her area and finds an unlikely and unwanted assistant in one of the new arrivals on the block, who's her neighbor Theo. So Sydney and Theo's deep dive into history quickly becomes a dizzying descent into paranoia and fear. Their neighbors may not have moved to the suburbs at all, and the push to revitalize the community may be more deadly than advertised. When does a coincidence become a conspiracy? Where do people go when gentrification pushes them out? And can Sydney and Theo trust each other or themselves long enough to find out before they too disappear? This sounds great. It sounds fab. This is definitely the time to be reading thrillers and things like that. I'm 100% here for spooky stuff, crime fiction, and thrillers in the winter. So I think that this is going to be a great addition to my very towering November TBR, which seems to be growing and growing and growing. So the next books that I have, the last ones for this haul, are gifts from my Amazon wishlist, which is very kind. So these first two are from Amber from Books of Amber. We've been doing kind of a book swap. I've sent her some of the stuff that I was unhauling, and she's sent me some wishlist gifts, so thank you, Amber. But this first one is The Girls by Emma Cline. This is, from what I know, sort of a, it's not the Manson family, but it is sort of very similar to the Manson family, like a fictionalized version, but it's basically about these women who joined up with this crazy cult leader. So it's the summer of 1969. Evie Boyd is 14 and desperate to be noticed. So she's bored, she's restless, the days sort of stretch out ahead of her until she sees the girls. Hair long and uncombed, jewelry catching the sun, and at the center, Suzanne, black-haired and beautiful. If not for Suzanne, she might not have gone, but intoxicated by her and the life that she promises, Evie follows the girls back to the decaying ranch where they live. Was there a warning, a sign of what was coming, or did Evie already know that there was no way back? This sounds great. It sounds really, really interesting. It's one that I've had on my radar for a very, very long time, and I think that this is going to be a really, really fascinating read. Next is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is one I've been meaning to read for ages, but it's me. So I can't tell if this is a historical fiction book, a dystopian book, maybe a feminist dystopian book, a horror book. I think it might be kind of shades of all of them. So we have a character named Emmanuel, who is born on the fringes of a place called Bethel. She does her best to obey the church and follow the holy protocol, for it was in Bethel that the first prophet pursued and killed 4 powerful witches and so cleansed the land. So a chance encounter lures her into the dark wood that surrounds Bethel. It's a forbidden place haunted by the spirits of the witches who bestow an extraordinary gift on Emmanuel, the diary of her dead mother. So fascinated and fearful of the secrets that her mother's diary reveals, she begins to understand why her mother once consorted with witches, and as the truth of the prophets and their history is revealed, Emmanuel understands what must be done, for the real threat to Bethel is its own darkness. This sounds great. This, I've heard, is really, really, really good. I've heard tons of praise for this book and I'm really looking forward to it. This is one of my buddy reads for November. I'm reading it with a bunch of friends from the Space Sirens book club. So the next book is a gift from my lovely friend Moon, who is a book blogger here in the UK, and I'll link her down below if you want to check her out, which you should. This is The Weight of the Stars, and this is by Kay Ankrum. So this just sort of like came across my recommended for you list, and I was really intrigued by it. So this follows a girl named Ryan, and she dreams of traveling to the stars. However, she is living in a trailer park on the wrong side of town. It feels like a career in space just isn't for someone like her. So instead, she sort of settles for acting out and skipping school with her delinquent friends, until one day she meets Alexandria. So she's a furious loner who spurns Ryan's offer of friendship until there's a horrific accident that leaves Alexandria with a broken arm, and these two girls end up bonding despite themselves. And Ryan learns that Alexandria's mother is actually an astronaut who volunteered for a one-way trip to the edge of the solar system. So every night without fail, Alexandria waits to catch radio signals from her mother, and now it's up to Ryan to lift her onto the roof every day until the silence between them grows into friendship and eventually something more. This sounds lovely. This sounds like a really, really interesting book. It's one that sounds like it's much more kind of contemporary YA than I am generally willing to read, but because it has that sort of space angle and that interest in space, I think that this is going to be a really, really lovely read. I'm very much looking forward to this. It feels like it's going to be a very gentle book. And last but not least, I have Lyriel by Garth Nix. This was sent to me very kindly by my friend Elle, who is a book blogger and I believe also one of the co-hosts of the Clear Your Shit Readathon, which I'm really loving right now. So I'll link all of their information down below. But this is the second book in this series. You may have seen in my November TBR, if I put it in at the time that I filmed that video, I've been adding stuff to that constantly, to the bags of books I'm bringing. But it's a sort of beloved kind of classic-ish YA series that it seems everyone has read, and the audiobooks I would very highly recommend. I listened to Sabriel I think last year, and I absolutely loved it. Tim Curry narrates the audiobooks. He's fabulous. And it follows a girl named Sabriel, who is the daughter of the Abhorsen, who's kind of this necromancer. But rather than, you know, bringing the dead back to life to do nefarious things, he instead puts the dead to rest. So her father disappears and she has to go and find him and sort of take on the role of the Abhorsen. The first book in the series is fabulous. I've been wanting to read this entire series, and these new gorgeous covers from Hotkey Books just came out, so it seemed perfect. So I'm really looking forward to this. Okay, so now I've got some NetGalley books. So the very first one, I'm going to move to the side a little bit so I can put the covers up on the screen. So the first is The Sanatorium by Sarah Piers. This comes out from Transworld Books on the 18th of February, 2021. So, let's see. An imposing, isolated hotel high up in the Swiss Alps is the last place that Ellen Warner wants to be, but she's taken time off from her job as a detective. So when she receives an invitation out of the blue to celebrate her estranged brother's recent engagement, she feels like she has no choice but to accept. So she arrives in the midst of a threatening storm and she immediately feels on edge. Although it's beautiful, there's something about the hotel that's not quite right. It's been recently converted from an abandoned sanatorium, which makes her nervous, as it does her brother Isaac. So when they wake the following morning to find out that his fiancée Laure has vanished without a trace, Ellen's unease grows. So the storm hits, cutting off access to and from the hotel, and the longer Laure stays missing, the longer the remaining guests begin to panic. This sounds really fun. This sounds like a really, really fabulous sort of like a closed room thriller mystery novel type thing. It's giving me some Hunting Party vibes, which is a book that I really enjoyed. So I think that this is going to be a really fun one. I'm really looking forward to this. Then I have kind of a funny one. This one comes out in June, actually on my birthday, on June 8th. So this is like a really, really, really advanced copy. But this is A Dark and Secret Place by Jen Williams. This is the American title. I believe it has a different title in the UK. I'll go ahead and look it up and put it on the screen. But it popped up on the American NetGalley, and I figured I might as well give it a try. So this comes out from Crooked Lane Books, as I said, on the 8th of June next year. And Jen Williams is best known for her fantasy fiction. She's, I believe, a World Fantasy Award winner, if not multiple nominee. I've actually not read any of her fantasy books, but I am very much looking forward to them. They have come highly recommended. But this is something a little bit different. This is kind of a crime thriller novel. So this sounds like it's right up my alley. So we have Heather Evans, who returns to her family home after her mother's baffling suicide, and she makes an alarming discovery. There are stacks and stacks of preserved letters from a notorious serial killer named Michael Reeve. So he's known as the Red Wolf, and he has been in prison for over 20 years, serving a life sentence for the gruesome and ritualistic murders of several women across the country, although he has always protested his innocence. So the police have no reason to listen, yet Heather isn't the only one to have cause to re-examine the murders. So the body of a young woman has just been found, dismembered and placed inside of a tree, and the corpse planted with flowers, just as the Red Wolf has once done. So the question is, what did Heather's mother know? Why did she kill herself? And with the monstrous Red Wolf locked up safely inside of a maximum security prison, who is stalking young women now? This sounds great. This sounds fabulous. It's probably one that I'm going to read a little bit early because, as I said, this is the perfect time to read these kinds of like thrillers and crime fiction and stuff like that. And I think that this is going to be a really fabulous addition to my winter reading. Next is a YA fantasy book. This is one I am so excited for. It looks like it's going to be amazing. This was, I believe, a victim of the pandemic. I think it was meant to come out this year, but it has been pushed into February of next year. So this is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. So this comes out from Usborne Publishing in the UK on the 4th of February. So in this book we have 16-year-old Deka, and she lives in Otera, a deeply patriarchal and ancient kingdom where a woman's worth is tied to her purity, and she must bleed to prove it. But when she bleeds gold, the color of impurity, of a demon, she faces a consequence worse than death. And she's saved by a mysterious woman who tells her of her true nature. She is an Alaki, a near immortal with exceptional gifts, so the stranger offers her a choice: to fight for the Emperor and with others just like her, or be destroyed, which doesn't seem like quite a lot of choice. So there is actually a trigger warning on the NetGalley. It says the Gilded Ones include scenes of violence which some readers may find distressing, just as a heads up. This sounds fabulous. I know some people who have already read it. I'm deeply jealous and I'm really looking forward to it. Then we have Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. So this one comes out from Pan Macmillan on the 18th of March next year, and this looks really good. I'm really excited for this one. So the tagline for this book is, "When ghosts talk, she will listen." So we follow a character named Ropa who has dropped out of school to become a ghost talker, someone who communicates with the dead in Edinburgh, and she kind of makes a living running messages from the dead to the living. She figures it's harmless enough. So turns out that the dead whisper that someone is bewitching children, leaving them husks empty of joy and life, and it's on her sort of turf, so she feels honor bound to investigate, but what she learns will change her world. This sounds really, really, really good. I think this is going to be fabulous. I love anything that is Edinburgh set. I will read anything that is Edinburgh set, and this sounds like it's going to be a really, really good one, so this is definitely high on my list of priorities for the winter. So now we have a book that actually comes out today from Titan Books on the 3rd of November 2020. We have The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. I've not read any of T. Kingfisher's books, but I do have The Twisted Ones on my TBR, which was a gift from my friend Kayla from Crack Into a Good Book, and she really, really enjoyed it, so I'm very much looking forward to that. When I saw that T. Kingfisher had a new book out, I was very, very intrigued. So this description starts out with the words, "Pray that they are hungry." So we follow a character named Kara who finds these words written in a mysterious bunker that she's discovered behind a wall in her uncle's house. So she's freshly divorced, living back at home, and Kara becomes obsessed with these cryptic words and starts to explore this peculiar area, only to discover that holds portals to countless alternate realities. But all these places are haunted by creatures that seem to hear her thoughts, and the more one fears them, the stronger they become. This sounds fabulous. I'm really looking forward to this. I love that that's kind of a vague description, but it tells you exactly what you need to know. I'm really, really loving horror at the moment, and I think that this is going to be perfect. And last but not least, from Hodder and Stoughton, coming out on the 21st of January, is The Charmed Wife by Olga Grushin. So this is basically a Cinderella retelling, but with a bit of a twist. It takes place 13 years after the supposed happily ever after, and follows Cinderella and Prince Charming in their, like, regular life. It says she married the man of her dreams, the perfect ending that she deserved after diligently following all of the fairy tale rules. Yet now, 2 children and 13 and a half years later, things have gone badly wrong. So she sneaks out of the palace one night to get help from a witch who, for a price, offers love potions to disgruntled housewives. But the old hag flings the last ingredients into the cauldron, and Cinderella doesn't ask for a love spell to win Prince Charming back. She instead decides she wants him dead. This sounds great. This sounds so good. This is what I want from, like, fairy tale retellings. I want the exploration of the supposed happily ever after and what it's actually like for these fairy tale women who have so little agency, sort of living their lives and realizing that maybe fairy tales aren't quite so good. It sounds so incredibly good. I'm really excited, and so is my friend Dax here. So that is it for my October TBR. My leg is asleep and I'm surrounded by books, so I should probably tidy up and keep packing, but I would love to hear what you ended up hauling in the month of October, if you read any of these books, if they're in your TBR, or you have a recommendation for a place where I should start reading. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.